Well, take us, if you don't mind, take us through your journey, because Everlasting Nora, that's your first book that's come
Yeah.
out this year, and it's 12 years ago that you're really committing and saying, I'm going to write books for children. What was that overall journey from kind of start to finish?
Well, like I said earlier, I started with picture books, and then I started writing novels, and yeah, it was really tough. I mean,
Okay.
when I spent a year basically writing Everlasting Nora. Back then, it had a different title, and so I went to my first. I wrote. I think I went to a writer's day when I saw Lisa Yee speak. It was around April. I don't know what, I forgot what year. And then later that year, I started writing, and I had written maybe 4 or 5 chapters, and I went to a writer's retreat in September, and I had such great uh, feedback for those pieces, because it was like a critique group setting. You went to a retreat, and you would sit with people, and you had an established author lead the group, and it was just so great. I had such a great experience. Everyone is so encouraging. So I finished the book later that year, and I decided to get a critique group. And so I got into a critique group. I spent maybe a couple of years with one critique group, and then a second one, because my first critique group dissolved after a year and a half. And so I met up with another critique partner who is still currently my partner, which is great. I've been with her for 10 years. And so we worked on Everlasting Nora for a while. Then I went out and started querying it. It was tough getting into the trenches, because it sparked interest. But at first, I think this was probably 2009, 2010, when there wasn't a lot of diversity on the market. I mean, there was some. I mean, of course, because Lisa Yee published Millicent Min, right? So there was some, but
Not
not a
nearly
whole
enough,
lot.
though.
Yeah, and I think this story, the first version of the story was a little bit more realistic. I mean, this is realistic, but there were some elements there that made it, I think, a little bit more YA than middle grade, because I added some elements there, that some elements of danger, and certain, there was a little bit more on drug addiction and things like that in the first version, and the dangers to young girls in places like that. And so I think, agents would read it. They would be so very interested and say, we've never read anything like this before. But the trouble was, they didn't know if there would be a market for it. And I thought to myself, what? How can there not be a market for this? I mean, Filipino Americans have been here, Filipinos have lived here in America for over 100 years. And so it can't be that. And so I think it's just, maybe they weren't sure. And so I shopped that around with agents for a while, and for maybe about 2 years. And then I sort of gave up on it, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to write YA. So I wrote a YA book, and that's actually how I got my agent. So I spent a couple of years drafting, revising my YA book. I still queried my middle grade novel, Everlasting Nora. But I, just, kind of riding the waves of those, getting rejected. Every time I received a rejection, I queried maybe 5 more agents and just kept sending out queries. And then when I was ready with my YA, I started sending that out. And like I said, after a year, I signed with Paula Meunier of Top Notch Literary Agency.
And did you come to her just through a query, or did you meet her at a conference?
No, just through query. Yeah, I Query Tracker at the time was my friend.
Sure.
It's a website called Query Tracker, and I also did a lot of research. There's a blog, I think, with Writer's Digest, where they introduce a lot of new agents, and so I usually kept tabs on that. And luckily for me, Paul was still looking for clients. She was looking for clientele, and so when she read my book, she was very interested in the YA book. And that one was just a story. That one was a paranormal book. It was about a girl who's a psychic, and she uses her psychic abilities to search for her missing friend. And so when we worked on that a little bit, and then we started shopping that around to editors. But unfortunately, this was 2012. The climate was sort of, well, we have a lot right now. We have a lot of paranormal books, so it didn't quite work out for the YA novel. And so I told my agent about my middle grade. And so she said, yeah, send it to me. And she loved it. We worked on it a little bit, and then she started sending that out. And then she met, I believe she met Diana Foe at BA, and that's where she pitched the book to Diana, and the story goes from there.
We're going to chat, of course, with Diana next week. So a question I want to make sure that I ask you this week, and then I'm going to ask her next week the inverse, which is, what is it like to work with Miranda Cruz? But since I'm talking with you, what was that experience like of working with Diana Foe and of having an editor touch your baby and maybe make some changes along the way?
You know, I have to be perfectly honest with you, Rob. For as long as I've been dreaming about becoming a published author, once I was always a little bit terrified of the process of once the book is acquired, and when the editor gives me her notes. That moment was terrifying for me because I wasn't sure. I thought, oh my gosh, will I be able to pull it off? Will I be able to take those notes and revise and to create, re-massage this piece into something my editor, it all would love, even more than initially, when she bought the book, because of course, editors have their own, I think, vision for their ideas of how we can make the book better, right? And so I had such anxieties over that. But when I spoke to Diana, we met on a Skype visit, because of course she's in New York, I'm in California. So before we started the process, we talked over Skype, and just to chat and get to know each other, and that was nice and made me feel a lot more comfortable. And Diana's notes, though, she was great. She was wonderful to work with. She responded to questions I had very, promptly. She clarified things for me when I was confused. And in general, it was just a really, really pleasant experience. She gave me enough time to work on my first round of revisions, so that was wonderful. And then each time she came back, we did maybe, I think, 3 rounds altogether of revisions. Each round was just a little bit smaller than the first, so that was great. But yeah, she was great. She made the experience so good for me, I have to say. It was great. She just took all those fears I had and chopped them down, and she just told me, "You can do this. I believe it. Just take your time. I'm open to any questions. I'm available for you." And so, yeah. So she was awesome. I couldn't have dreamed of a better editor for myself, for this book, for me, for it being my first experience. She was wonderful.
So there's no headbutting. It was all, oh, that's a great idea. That will make the book better. Let me follow your vision and let's improve this thing.
Well, we did have some discussions. Like, I think during the second round, I did have to call her because email wasn't enough. So I asked her for a phone call if we could talk, and she was open to that. And it wasn't necessarily like headbutting or disagreeing. It was just more like trying to explain to her the